I don't know how to describe it, but in this group it seems to make sense. My whole life, my relationship with my mother has been complicated. I won't describe everything, but the main thing is that she is an intelligent person and seems to have two faces.
She can be smart and nice, but she also has a second very negative and sharp and offensive side, in which she insulted my father, his brother, her sisters, and me, that we are all some kind of unscrupulous people, which is completely untrue.
I have felt guilty and unrecognized only in her eyes my whole life. I have a wonderful relationship with my daughters. She has always thought that I am not a good mother, and she is always trying to protect them from me. About 25 years ago, I emigrated with my family and gained great freedom. However, now I have been back in Bulgaria for the last 5 years, and as a daughter, I am available for everything. But with this unstable behavior of hers, it is very difficult for me.
She has never apologized for anything. She is already 87, I am a little over 60. She has always been bossy and behaved like a perfect person who has an opinion about everything and has a very negative attitude towards me. I am a child, she has no one else to pay attention to her. Usually after some pout, when I stop looking for her after a week, she calls herself. Now she is already in a month of anger, after an extremely small argument because I did not agree that it is her business when and how much I see my children. Every 4 or 5 days I call to ask how she is and if she has softened, but the result is always the same, a sharp answer and hanging up the phone.
I do not know how and who can help me cope with the obligation to take care of her, with the feeling of guilt if I do not take care, and what to do in general. Wow. What we just heard is, well, it's a profoundly deep and exhausting internal battle, isn't it? It's this constant tug of war between duty and pain, between love and this really deep-seated hurt. And look, it's completely understandable to feel this way, even after so many years. So let's unpack this a bit, because the very first step to feeling better is realizing that this struggle, which feels so incredibly personal and lonely, is actually a recognizable pattern, and a very common one, unfortunately.
So this dynamic, this idea of having two faces, charming on the outside, but so critical and devaluing in private, this is a really well-understood pattern in psychology. It often gets talked about in the context of controlling or even narcissistic personality traits. But here's the important part. Giving it a name isn't about slapping a label on the mother. Not at all. It's about taking the problem from inside of you and putting it outside of you. It lets you see that this isn't some personal failure on your part. It's an incredibly difficult dynamic that frankly anyone would struggle with.
And that leads us to something absolutely crucial, something you really need to hold on to tight. Your reality is valid. When you're constantly being undermined like that, it's so easy to start questioning yourself, right? So let's just be crystal clear about a few things. Her refusal to ever apologize, that doesn't mean you're wrong. Her accusations about you as a parent, they do not define your worth. Not for a second. The amazing relationship you have with your own daughters, that is the proof. That's the realest thing here, and it shows exactly who you are. Don't ever let that go. Okay, so you might be thinking, if this pattern is so obviously painful, why is it so ridiculously hard to break free? It's a great question, and the answer really comes down to 3 very powerful emotional traps. These traps are what keep people completely locked into this awful cycle of hope and then, inevitably, disappointment. First up, you've got the guilt trap. It's that heavy feeling of, well, I'm all she has. And that sense of obligation can feel like it's crushing you. Then there's the hope trap. This one is so insidious, it's that little glimmer you feel every single time you pick up the phone to see if, just maybe, this time she's softened. It's what keeps that hamster wheel of hurt spinning. And then, maybe the deepest one of all, is the childhood need trap. It's that quiet, persistent voice from way back when, the part of you that still hopes, maybe one day, she'll finally approve of me. You see how these 3 work together? They create this incredibly powerful emotional prison. And this brings us to a really difficult, but honestly a really freeing truth. At 87 years old, a person's fundamental personality, their basic way of seeing and interacting with the world, it's just not going to change. It's a hard pill to swallow, I know. But accepting it, that is the absolute turning point. Because it allows you to stop focusing on the impossible task, which is changing her, and start focusing on the possible and absolutely necessary task of protecting yourself. So once we can really accept that reality, we can actually start to build a practical path forward. And let me be clear, this is not about abandoning her or being unkind. Not at all. It's about redefining what care actually looks like. Care for your mother, yes, but just as importantly, care for yourself. So what does that actually look like day to day? Well, first, you have to separate practical care from what's really emotional self-punishment. You can make sure she has food, that her bills are paid, all the necessary stuff, without expecting or needing any warmth or approval in return. Second, create some structure. A predictable schedule for calls, say once or twice a week, stops that awful cycle of you constantly checking in just to get shot down. Third, when she hangs up on you, let it go. Just let it be. Chasing after her just teaches her that hanging up is a great way to get you to react. It's a control tactic. Fourth is the internal work. You have to keep reminding yourself over and over, I am a separate adult, her judgment doesn't define me. And finally, please get your own support. You need a space to process all this accumulated pain with a professional who really gets these kinds of dynamics.
And all of this, all these steps, they lead to a really powerful shift in how you see the whole situation. The goal here is to move away from the heavy, paralyzing weight of guilt and toward the clear, manageable idea of responsibility. Now, I know they sound kind of similar, but believe me, they are worlds apart.
Yeah, check this out. It's such a perfect way to see the difference. Guilt, that's an emotion, and it's totally stuck in the past. It feels like this endless debt that says you have to just take the mistreatment. But responsibility, that's an action. It's grounded right here in the present. It's about choosing to provide humane care, but, and this is the key, within boundaries that protect you. So you can be responsible for making sure she's safe and has her needs met, without being responsible for her moment-to-moment happiness, and without being responsible for taking on emotional damage yourself.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's this. After all these years of navigating this incredibly painful dynamic, of carrying this immense emotional load, you are not a bad daughter. You are a tired daughter. And that is a completely different thing, a completely understandable thing to be. And just letting yourself recognize that, that's the very first step toward finally getting the peace you absolutely deserve.